great. Thank you very much. Got it. All right. I hope you're all right. Anitha, welcome. Sampson, Manjara, and all the others who joined. Thank you very much for making time for this webinar. We'll just wait more maybe for 3 minutes, give some time for some more people to join and we'll get started, right? Are you okay with that?
That's okay.
Great, amazing. Meanwhile, maybe you can start, I don't know, whoever is part of the participants, just tell us, how was your day? What is one great thing that you achieved today? Or just something that maybe was kind of like a challenge during this day. Who want to start? Want to go ahead? One challenging thing today and one successful thing that you were able to do. Should I call names? I know we are not in the class, but it's not a bad idea sometimes, Want to go ahead? Okay, Mr. Nilton, you want to go ahead? Tell us, how was your day? What is one challenging thing and one successful thing that you were able to do today, please? You're muted. It's like you're muted.
We just started school. It's our first weeks, and SABS is a little complicated over school. So the first week is always a whole lot of nothing. Just having a conversation with kids, kind of getting to know them a little bit. And,
okay.
So I don't know if I've had maybe a challenge having a conversation with an English teacher who was having a hard time understanding that I know some things in English that he doesn't, even though I'm a science teacher. So that took a little bit of arguing.
I see. That's an interesting one. Okay. Tell us then one successful thing also. Was it to overcome that challenge with the English teacher?
I did. It took a while, but I did. We eventually got him to understand what I was saying. The way that we teach English has some true flaws that even he didn't see because he fell into them.
I see. All right. Okay. Thank you very much for sharing that, Sir Nilton. Amazing. Who else want to go? Still have 2 more minutes to go. Why not starting with our speakers, or should we wait a bit more later when you get the time to introduce yourself? Or maybe we can go with Manjara. Manjara, are you here? I want to go next. Just tell us your day, one thing you were able to accomplish, one thing that was a challenge today. Welcome to all the others who are joining us now. Manjara, go ahead, please, if you want, please.
Yeah, so one thing that I achieved today was finishing part of my research paper.
Interesting.
That was pretty satisfying. And one challenging thing I could say was to really sit down and look. So that was very challenging as well.
Okay, I see. All right. Thank you also, Manjara, for sharing that. Great. Okay, so I think maybe 1 more minute. Welcome. I've seen Professor Bless. Thank you for joining. Dr. Tomlin, Paul, Anderson. Really appreciate to see you online. So what we are doing now is just ask people to share with us if you may want to, one challenging thing today that you encountered, and maybe one successful thing that you're able to accomplish today. Feel free, please, to jump in and unmute yourself and share. Let people know how your day was. We have 1 more minute, just one last person before we start. I want to go next. I feel the energy is quite low here. No one want to go next? Okay, so all right, so I go next then. So for me, one challenging thing was, I have a couple of things that I need to oversee. And yes, Anderson, thank you. Can I share the chat? For sure, I read it for you. I'm even seeing Lucas here. Good day. Challenge we're setting up on our university for the ability to obtain federally designated funds for workforce development. Interesting. And the success was to review multiple charters for establishing an internal audit process at my institution. Great. It's like you had quite an interesting day. Okay, great. Anderson, meanwhile, you can share while we just proceeding with the next part of the webinar. thank you very much for engaging. So my name is Sadikh Mbengue. I am a learning instructional designer. So literally what I do is supporting people who have expertise in certain field or domain, trying to understand how to turn their knowledge into something that's more digestible to the audience they want to serve. And that means, you know, using different learning theories and just trying to see how to make learning more effective in the classroom. And my area of interest is mainly around higher education, but we're trying to prepare programs that, you know, bring out the type of students who are, to me, at least in my understanding, who can address some socioeconomic needs that we have and develop programs that are contextualized based on our needs. And part of the work that we are doing, also work with Learnable, which is our learning agency, consulting agency. And part of the work we do is also to bring key stakeholders in education and trying to, you know, just ignite some conversation around ways forward in terms of education. And we started this during the first LEXICON event. That's actually a conference, that's the Learning Excellence and Innovation Conference that took place in May 19th. And what we are trying to do now is to just continue on that conversation, but turning it into a more practice-oriented thing beyond just conversing, having the chance to develop action guide and share it with people who are part of the community, so that we have this growing community that's learning from one another and get the chance just to build things that are more impactful in this work we are doing on a daily basis. And today I have two great people, Anitha and Sampson, who are going to be our speakers. We'll give them more time later on to just you know, introduce themselves, but let me walk you through the agenda. The first thing is just to welcome you. That's what we're trying to do with the, you know, the challenge of the day and the success of the day. Next thing, we have a short icebreaker to just introduce the topic. And then we have a 25-minute panel conversation. And then you will have 15 minutes for the audience to ask the questions you may have. And yeah, we share the announcement. Are we good to go? Just put one in the chat if you're good to go to the next stage. Just put one, type out one on the chat to make us realize that you're good to go. Great, 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 great. All right. So next, Mobolaji. So I have my co-host, I forgot Mr. Mobolaji. Mobolaji, we are working together and he will be the one supporting on the logistic part on this work. Thank you very much, Mobolaji also. And he is a project manager also at Learnable. Can you go ahead, Mobolaji? All right, so we start with our speakers. So the floor is to Anitha. So Anitha is the director of Oklahoma Christian University, but I'll let her tell more, introduce herself within her 2 minutes time. And yeah, we hear more about what she does as a work, you know, who she is and what she does and how does her work relate to the topic we are going to talk about today. Welcome, Anitha. Please unmute. And
hello, I don't know if you're able to see me. Sorry, I'm having to zoom in. I hope I don't make anybody.
You're good to go.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Anitha Ingabe. I am somebody that's passionate about educational technology. I work with Oklahoma Christian University, which is it's an American university that's set up here in Rwanda, and we offer MBA programs, and just exciting to be doing so fully online. So we're fully, I mean, we're a remote campus essentially. And so I'll be happy to share more after, but that's me in a nutshell.
All right, thank you very much, Anitha. Thank you for, so I think the next one would be Sampson. So Sampson is a senior manager at the African, I was about to say American, sorry. African Institute for the Mathematical Science. And I'm glad there's also Professor Bless, who is also the academic director of FM, who is here. And so Sampson will be also telling us what he does in terms of work related to education. And yeah, Sampson, the floor is yours.
Hi, Sadikh. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Sampson, as you said. I like to think of myself as a creative misfit. I don't know how many people would identify as a misfit, but I like to think of myself as a creative misfit, and I enjoy working in education. I'm a firm believer in the potency of education, and particularly inclusive education. And I'm happy to be here to chat about this topic. My interest is quite broad, and part of the work that I do at the Bertha Center at the University of Cape Town, where I have another position, researching into inclusive education, I'm looking at how we can prepare young people for the future of work, primarily considering the fourth industrial revolution and doing a comparative analysis between Ghana, Rwanda, and South Africa. So I'm looking forward to share my insights and what I've learned through that process with everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to Sampson. Real pleasure to have you here. And thank you also for dedicating this time so that you can impart our audience and also ask about the work you're doing and just sharing your expertise around educational technology and how also it's relevant to the context of in the African context. So I think Mobology can move on to the next. So yeah, I think to start us off, yeah, just giving a brief of work of what you're doing. So this is part of Lexicon that I introduced earlier, mainly trying to bring educators, people who are into education, learning designers, and education consultants and all, to try to create a space where these people come together and create a value based on the different experiences that they share. And our intention is to be able to support, the development of transformational learning models beyond just, like I often like to say, giving students certificate. We want people who are able to impact their community and really transform lives of people, because that should be, at least in my understanding, the purpose of education. And I think the best way to do that is to, liaise with practitioners who on a daily basis are on the field doing the work and trying to get insight into the work they do and see how to take their words out there to the policymakers and other decision makers, trying to see how to create the kind of space that's going to be conducive for the type of young African that we want, right? So we can go now to the second point of this. So we have an icebreaker just for 5 minutes, a quick one to just get a sense of where we are at in terms of this topic. So yeah, first thing, we are going to show you some acronyms. I hope you know what an acronym is. If I'm not bad, Mr. Nilton, you can correct me, but an acronym set of words, I'm sorry, that has a certain meaning. That has a certain meaning or something. Now we're just going to show those words and you will tell us on the chat, or you can unmute yourself, tell us what this means. So we start with AR, VR. Who knows what that means? Or should I show an example? Okay, good. I'm seeing Lucas, which really like, okay, great. I'm seeing on the chat. Okay. Great, augmented, yes, good. So that's it. So it's that also speaks to EdTech. It is a computer-generated graphics to create, simulated environments and just bring a sense of reality into a virtual world. The next one, Bolaji, will be GBL. Who knows what that stands for? GBL on the chat. Interesting. I was waiting for this one. I knew no one would answer it. I would be surprised. Okay. Okay, Mubalaji, let's go. So GBL stands for game-based learning. Oh, Anderson got it. Okay, game-based learning. So yeah, it is a designing learning activities that incrementally introduce concept and guide learners toward an end goal, but using a game format. And the next one, Mubalaji, please. LMS. Who doesn't know LMS? Who doesn't know LMS? Tell us. Okay, who else? Okay, so LMS, Learning Management System. So basically, it's just a platform that supports other, administrative and learning programs, automating different things around education and different learning materials that are provided, but also a platform where students can connect to and just access the contents. The next one, Mobology. So we are left with 3 more. SEL. Who knows what that stands for? SEL. Okay, on the chat. Social emotional learning. Great. I see, Lucas. It's like you're very much impregnated into this. Good to know that. So yeah, so social emotional learning is the process of developing self-awareness, self-control, and interpersonal skills that are vital for school, work, and life success, right? And the next one, Mobology, please. Okay, all right, that one. MOOC. I think some of us are very good fans of MOOC. I have a number of friends who learn a number of stuff via this MOOC. So, okay, great. Who else want to share on the chat about MOOCs? Okay, who else want to tell us? Okay, Mobology next. So it's a massive open online course. So it's a model for delivering, learning content online for a person who just want to take it freely and also quite accessible for a number of people. And the next one and last one will be ed tech. What does that stand for? Okay, education. Okay, all right. Okay, I see. Great. So, Babalaji, let's go ahead. So, educational technology refers to the use of technology and technology processes to facilitate learning and improve performance. And today, Babalaji, next one, we are here to try to break down what that means, right? What that means in the class environment. For when we speak about EdTech, mainly it's about the learning management system, the digital tools and media that one can leverage, using also the information and communication technology, and trying to understand how that applies in the concept of learning, because that also applies in the concept of finances. Now we're speaking about fintech and a number of other fields. Now, how does that disrupt also those areas? Now, in terms of learning, we just wanted to provide this perspective where EdTech applies. We have different learning theories, and that just speak about behaviorism, cognitivism, constructivism. But the point is EdTech, in line with those different type of learning, trying to bring out, for example, when it comes to behaviorism, it's more of a game-based learning that is, simulated to help people get the kind of experiences that they need to just get the learning outcomes. Cognitivism, more it's around using visuals, infographics, video interactive whiteboards to help people learn and acquire knowledge. And the last one, which is more constructivism, which is more of, for example, this we are doing using Zoom to learn, and different reflection methods, also using coding and all that, right? Now let's put this in context. In an African context, why all this is relevant now is to try to connect it with an African context when we have 70% of the population under the age of 30, which means we are very, very young. And what we do with young people, I believe we have to educate them if we want to get the most out of them, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why we are trying to leverage or trying to see how technology can contribute to increasing a number of things in terms of quality of education, but also access. But and as much as technology can be an opportunity, there are a number of challenges which our speakers, Anitha and Sampson, would be telling us about based on their experience. People know around the low compression rate that happen during online courses and all that, and a number of other factors, which is lack of engagement. And now the driving question from here is to know what are the gaps we need to close while delivering learning with technology, right? Now, to help us answer those questions, we'll start with, our discussion, the panel discussion, Babalaji. So with the first question, I think I'll give it to okay, great. So I give it to yes, maybe Anitha, if you want to start us off, if you're okay. So first, trying to understand how relevant is the integration of technology in education. Based on your experience, does it really help students learn more deeply?
I'm not sure if you started the question with me. I think I lost connection for a bit.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. If you don't mind repeating, I had to reconnect myself. I had an issue.
Sorry about that. Very sorry. So the question was more to try and understand, based on your experience, right, in terms of education, providing education from a technological standpoint, how relevant for you, how relevant is the integration of technology in education?
Okay, so I think that mainly speaking from like a personal point of view, I deal with the master's level education, and I mean, the fact that our program is online is huge for the working class, essentially. A lot of the students that we have are busy, they're not able to travel to go get, quality education, for example. So the flexibility, essentially. So that's going to be the first answer I give here. There's a certain amount of flexibility that comes with online learning or educational technology as a whole. The fact that you can attend a classroom at a distance is huge. So I'll let Sampson maybe add on that, but yeah.
All right. Okay, great. Sampson, do you have something to add to that? Thank you very much, Anitha, for that perspective.
Yeah, I would like to, add on to what Anitha said with an analogy, right? It's as simple as, why do we use mobile phones today, right? Education is a lifelong process. It's not a thing of going to primary school and then graduating with a degree from the university. It's a lifelong process. And so long as there's a digital revolution and we're experiencing digital transformations in other aspects of our lives, education cannot be left out in the process. So it is extremely vital to have, technology playing a role in our learning and instruction process.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much for Florence. So this is what I'm getting from what you said. For Anitha, based on your experiences, offers a certain room for flexibility, particularly for a particular type of audience. I guess for that, maybe that applies more to professionals who maybe don't want to get limited by space or time when it comes to learning and want to have more flexibility. And Sampson, what I'm getting is that seeing that technology is also disrupting a number of things that are part of life. So it wouldn't be a surprise to see also technology disrupting or getting us to rethink how education is delivered to people who want to serve. Is that what you mean? Let me know if you can hear me.
That's right.
Yeah. I was saying that more so, think of it as a fundamental human right where you cannot be left behind, where we cannot afford to leave anybody behind. And so for us to be able to reach people at scale, for us to be able to get people who in many cases would have been marginalized, we ought to leverage technology.
Okay, great, great. Now speaking about that, making sure that technology gives an opportunity for marginalized people to access education. I think that also speaks to the idea of the infrastructures that are put in place, because technology does not exist without adequate infrastructures to enable people to access the different content that are there. When you look at that now and looking at the state of the development of technological infrastructure in Africa, how long do we still have to go maybe to increase the number of people accessing learning via different technological devices?
Thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can.
So I think that one of the things that are definitely a challenge is infrastructure. I think that one of the beauties, for example, of Rwanda is that we have fiber laid out throughout the whole country, which is great. But then again, how do you make sure that people have laptops to actually access the internet? And one of the things that I've noticed just through conversations with other higher learning institutions in Rwanda is, especially during COVID, I mean, that was a kind of an awakening moment, and I'm sure not just in Rwanda, but in many other developing countries, a lot of these universities did not have access to technology, essentially. So not even a blended mode of learning would have been possible, mainly because, first of all, universities didn't have access to LMS, like we talked about, learning management systems we mentioned, but also if they did have that, students don't all have laptops to be able to access those courses from their home. Now, when you look at data around, for example, smartphones around just even East Africa as a whole, there are ways for people to get a hold of a smartphone. So now the real question is, how do we develop courses that are even accessible through our phones and things like that? But I'm not going to segue. I'll just answer with that.
I see. Okay. I just want to follow up on that. For you, knowing that you're delivering online, when it comes to that, how do you do it in your institution, for example?
So currently we use a learning management system called Blackboard. And our program is actually an accelerated program. So if I was to paint the picture, our courses are 8 weeks long. Within each week, a student will have to log in and do assignments. So there's different learning stuff. You're gonna have quizzes, you're gonna have research papers, you're gonna have actual proctored exams using software. We have one called Respondus Lockdown Browser. And I mean, if we're gonna talk about assessment, those softwares have the option of a camera looking at you kind of like this, so that, professor knows that I'm not cheating and I'm not reading notes on it, like a different device or paper or something like that. So they are there's different learning stops. We use different ways of learning, not just the software. There's books students will have to read still. There's different research databases that they have access to. So, and there's also the aspect of group study as well. So there's still that traditional sense, because some of them are in Rwanda, they know each other, so they're able to sit down and have teamwork, but also they're still able to take the program if they're, let's say, in a completely remote space, as long as they have internet.
Okay. So if I understand well, for you, you have a very solid and robust platform that enables you to track actual learning of students and ensure that I don't want to mention that word, but cheating doesn't happen in a way, right? Because also one of the challenges that people can mention when it comes to deploying technology. But before jumping into that, I want to I think we mentioned something about the infrastructure, and Sampson already started speaking about that. Now, I think something that is key when it comes to supporting the infrastructures is to have the main stakeholder in the country, which is mainly the decision maker that speak to the government, right? Now, I think, Sampson, one of the things that you do is advocacy. So for you, part of the work you're doing is understanding also how to push some agenda on the table so that people can make adequate decision to help support some of their advancement that are needed there. In your understanding and the research you're doing in the fourth industrial revolution, what are the steps that we need to push forward on the table for the decision makers to understand the importance maybe of technology in education and how that can help address some of the challenges?
Thanks, Sadikh, for the question. I would use Africa as an example, and the issues about infrastructure, we've all read several literature about it, and Anitha has highlighted some of them. Often when I get to engage with people in government, and I've had, the chance to engage a couple, one of the things that we talk about is, one, identifying what the priorities for the country is, right? As a country, what is our priority? What do we want to be known for? And then work backwards. For us to fix the problems around infrastructure, be it, the soft infrastructure or the hard infrastructure, soft in the terms of computers and all of that, hard in the terms of building, there are a number of things we need to sort of agree on or perhaps decide on to begin with. And part of it is, what education agenda are we pushing as a country, right? What are the skills that we want our learners to have by the time they get to a certain stage in their educational journey? What are the critical pain points within our system at the moment? And there are a number of countries that have piloted different things. In Ghana, for instance, during COVID, what happened is all the telecoms companies decided to zero rate all learning platforms for the various universities, which sort of eased the burden of people acquiring data to be able to log online and study. So that was like one intervention that really worked and sort of helped make the burden lighter. The other intervention was a dedicated TV channel that, always existed, but sort of became more useful during the COVID season. And so when I was growing up, we had something, we had like a TV channel where you could take math, biology, physics, and all of that courses at home, right? And it wasn't COVID. So at that time, several years back, we could actually take those courses online. So you could go into the classroom and then you could come home. And when you turn on your TV, you could have access to that. So there was a presidential special initiative on distance learning that allowed learners to, from as low as like middle school and maybe, elementary school, to start taking courses online when they get home to study. So there are a number of interventions that we could think about, especially around enabling or making education more inclusive, or sort of scaling inclusive access around education. The challenge, however, is that we need to, in the space that we work, or in the space that I work, and in most of the African countries, there's no dialogue. There's no cross-sectoral dialogue where the telcos are willing to sit with government and say, we want to sort of zero rate these number of websites. We're going to do this to help. But all the models that I've spoken about are models that could work in the African context, especially around making education very accessible and inclusive.
Okay. So two things that I'm noting from there is that the intervention of making sure people can access data in a more convenient way so that they can access the content. Another thing is to have some dedicated channels that provide content to the people, right? And I think at the end you mentioned key thing, something which is key, which is the inclusiveness, and also in regards to that, I want to maybe move it to Anitha. I think for you delivering a platform which is fully online, something that's often coming up is also how prepared are the people who are meant to teach those students when it comes to using the technology that's already there, because most of the time, at least quite a couple of times I have heard, particularly from, nothing to say about older people, but they tend to maybe take more time before they keep up with all these technological things that keep coming up. Now, if you ask them to teach using this platform, for you, how are you overcoming that in your institution? Is it a challenge that you're facing?
So if I understand correctly, you're just talking about kind of the technology adoption.
But the preparedness of their teachers who are meant to use this technology, how prepared are they to even get it using all this technology?
Yes, so the teachers, it's more on the teachers. So for the teachers, I would say there has to be like a serious training from the teacher's perspective, especially if we're going to look at, I guess, the classroom of the future, especially in the context like Africa, where a lot of these classrooms are still very traditional, but we're trying to switch to kind of, I'm going to say blended before we're fully online. I think there has to be some sort of, I don't know, advocacy around, first of all, the benefits, right? Because when you think about an online course, the fact that students have more access to, let's say, like a lot more quizzes, a lot more tests and things like that, and those can be automatically graded. So if you think about a professor's point of view or perspective, that's less time spent grading quizzes and things like that. So if professors understand that actually using this technology can free up some time for them to be a bit more creative within their classrooms and be more creative on how to even, I mean, when you think about, again, like the importance of educational technology, it also caters to a specific type of students, because not all students learn the same way. So when you start giving different interactive ways for students to learn, then I would only imagine more success in the learning itself. So I'd say there has to be, again, a bit more advocacy around the outcome for professors who haven't had to use that technology. So the training aspect is important, but also access to technology, because if we're going to talk again about, like, if we're going to contextualize in the regions that we're in, it's difficult for you to spend time online. You need internet. Do you have internet at home? Will the university provide that internet package for the professors when they're home? If they want to do a live Zoom class or things like that, will they be able to do that? So I think the challenges are still there, but it's still possible. Hopefully I've answered you.
Yes, definitely. So training and advocacy. So does that mean it's something that you do currently in your institution?
Currently, I do not have to, mainly because our university has done this for a long time, and so they go through a specific training actually before having to teach, and they actually work on their courses to kind of customize it to their own taste or style. So I don't have to do this. However, I've participated in a lot of assessments with a collaboration with the Higher Education Council during COVID. There's a lot of universities that kind of came in and they were trying to get help, to be able to start this online teaching. And I was able to learn a lot through that and just advise. And so part of the recommendations we were giving is, heavy training on the instructors side.
Okay, heavy training start. So that means then for you also, there's a role to play when it comes to speaking to regulators and trying to see how they can support other learning institutions to implement the same type of learning, right, or model. Okay, great, I see. So now I think that leads me maybe to Sampson to see also when it comes to, feel free also, there are certain questions, maybe they might not be on the spot on when it comes to your demo of expertise, but I think something that's important is the regulators are meant to decide, I'm using that word, but at least to oversee, right, in a way, and assess the way education is delivered. And something that keeps coming up is maybe the approach they use. It's quite maybe quite directive. You do this, you follow this. When it comes to that, and particularly when the space where you're trying to intervene, which is more bringing on the table some kind of relevant information for people to make decisions. What could be an ideal approach, for example, for the regulators to work with higher learning institutions and better understand how to integrate all these technologies to deliver learning that meets our outcomes?
Yeah, so one way that I like to think of this is how is very simple. Like, how do we make sure that we have a skilled workforce? How do we make sure a skilled workforce with future-proof skills to tackle the problems that we have in the future? And we're doing this at scale. The current capacities of our traditional universities won't enable us to do that. In fact, if we're saying we're going to educate everybody in Africa using the current infrastructure that we have, we can't do it, right? Because it's going to cost a lot more. It's also going to take a longer time, because I'll give you an example. In Ghana, we have more than 200,000 people graduating every year from high school, right? And that's like less of the actual numbers. Now, if you have 200,000 people graduating and universities take between 10,000 to 15,000 to maybe maximum 30,000 per year, and you have 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 traditional universities that are owned by the government, most likely, not everybody's going to make it. It's a very competitive space. You need space for international students. We're serving a market in Ghana. Most of the universities serve a market bigger than just Ghana. So you're looking at Liberia, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and a couple of other countries, right? You don't have the space. So how do you ensure that you're creating avenues where others can give alternative education, either via like virtual means, like an online university where people can go and still obtain the knowledge and the skills and the rigor that is required to be able to, make something out of their lives. As it is, not many regulatory bodies in Africa currently understand the whole ecosystem of online education. It is a very complex topic. Often there's sort of like a misunderstanding between education that happens or takes place online and education that takes place in the classroom, right? And the truth is, people are as great as their experiences, right? You can go and have an online MBA or an online MSc and still do great, right? But the problem is, because we have legacy institutions, and when I say legacy institutions, I'm talking about institutions that have existed for more than 50 to 100 years. And these regulators know these institutions. It makes it extremely difficult for new institutions that are coming up, that are under the age of perhaps 20 years, to say, this is the proof of concepts that I have. It is working. We're enabling and empowering young people to obtain the skills they need to become responsible and active citizens. It's always gets complex for them to sort of regulate that environment. So one of the things that I know a couple of countries do have is they have multiple they have like a qualifications system where once you take your university outside of the country, you can come and validate your certificates based on the courses, your transcripts, and a bunch of other things that your university can provide to the qualifications authority for them to vet, and then say, okay, this falls within this grade within this country. But as it is, not all the qualifications authorities understand, the education system worldwide to the extent that they are inclusive and very open-minded towards like the new entrants, how I like to call them, the new entrants into the world of education, where they barely existed for 5 years. They are doing really interesting work. They are providing opportunities for more young people to get access to education and a top class kind of education, but not necessarily at a very expensive rate. So very affordable, people can pay over a period of time and they still have their degree. But I think it's important for us not to be so focused on the degree and the certificate. For me, I always advocate that certificates become useless if the people are not skilled, right? So if I go through like a 4-year program, I go through a 2-year specialized master's program, and I cannot do anything, I cannot be impactful in the world of work or business, or in the world of research or academia, then what is the use of that certificate? So again, we need to sort of redefine for ourselves. Rwanda has a Rwanda and South Africa do have a very amazing system that I think a number of countries could learn from. They have a skills list. They've taken a stock of what skills we need within this economy. And so investments are being made gradually into and ensuring that they're able to build capacities around specialized areas. And so they are pretty flexible for organizations to come in and sort of plug into the system and support young people. And I think countries, should emulate that example to say, what are our pain points? What are the skills that we lack within the market? And how do we sort of fill those gaps with innovative models that are cheap, that are affordable, accessible, and very inclusive?
Okay, so connecting the need of the market to the type of training that we provide to students and the skills that we are looking at, but also give space for the new entrants, as you call them, right? To try and validate their innovation, not just to disregard them because of the fact that they didn't exist for a while, right? So provide a space where they can also share their takeaways from the practices that they are doing at school, right? Great. So now, just in a nutshell, I think we are going a bit over time. I give the question to Anitha. For you, knowing that you're running a higher learning institution that's fully online and particularly in Rwanda, and you have heard Sampson mentioning the fact that the Rwandan ecosystem is quite conducive to innovative actions. And so for you, what would be, when it comes to higher learning institutions, knowing that at least in Rwanda, right, knowing that they have a conducive ecosystem in a way, what would be the best practices for you at least to help them implement some education technology as part of their curriculum? Let me know if you can.
Right. Sorry, I had another. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Awesome. So
Anitha, it's like you're breaking. Sampson, can you hear Anitha? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we lost her, but she's
wow.
back.
Anitha, are you here? Sorry very much about this inconvenience. Anitha,
I'm really sorry.
yes, I think it's
I'm
better
here.
now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you.
I don't know what's going on, but I keep losing connection and then I'm back.
All right. So
technology will always fail us. I think that's the.
Go ahead, please. I was
anyway. So I think the question was around, if I caught it well, the question was around, it was around best practices, right?
Yes, for
and I think that especially in the yes, and yeah. I think the context here, again, I'm going to talk in Rwanda. We were lucky to bring in a program that was already existent in the US. So running it was very easy just because we're on a master's level again. And so we're dealing with easier students. However, if we're going to talk about other universities as a whole here, I would say the first thing I would give advice to, even on a regulator's perspective, is to really open the door and invite universities to start, to begin. Put your curriculum online. There's many learning management systems that are free, like Moodle. So you can start with just kind of trying to host a lot of that information online for students to learn. Again, like that adoption isn't easy. On a certain level, it can be challenging, or you know, like foreign for people, so people would be a bit shy. So I would say put it online. When it comes to regulators, not to look for perfection. And like, you know, like sometimes accreditors want like everything to be perfect, but like there should be a testing phase, in my opinion. Allow these universities to try. The second, I think, best practice is to, I would say, explore different types of assessments, right? I think a lot of people are scared that, if I put everything online, well, students will cheat, or students will help each other. But there's many interactive ways. There's many interactive ways to learn, and gamification of everything. So there's a lot of ways. I would just say best practice is to just again, test out different things that work, because I can only imagine, you know, like we talk about Gen Z, I can only imagine the classroom changing, like in the traditional classroom changing in the future. And I mean, with our attention span as it is for us, I can't imagine the younger people. And so there will have to be innovation in the education sector. So I would say, I don't know if I'm really answering your question, but I'll stop here for the matter of time.
All right. So I think some key thing I'm noting down, it's first on the side of the school, not to just fear, you know, that the technologies have the mean for students to cheat, right? But also for the regulators to provide space, just like what Sampson said, to test out new ideas so that we can see how to improve and do things better. Thank you very much, Anitha. Sampson, maybe in 1 minute, if you can just tell us based on you, what could be best practices to implement technology in education, focusing on higher learning institutions.
So, you know, I can, you know, wrap this up without talking about AIMS. And I would say that AIMS is like a very unique institution. We like to think of ourselves as the university of the 21st century. And, you know, centers of excellence like AIMS are pioneering education in a way that we actually haven't thought about education in a very long time, right? And so I would say that the best practice would be, let's learn from the examples we already have, okay? And learn the lessons from their mistakes, like understand how they go about their processes and how they're enabling and equipping, you know, young Africans to become creative leaders in science and technology. And once we're able to learn from those examples, we have the data, we have the experiences and all of that. Let's not go import something from the global north as a solution to our problems here, because we have solutions that are working and we need to support those solutions to enable them to scale and also create more access for young people.
Okay, so homemade solutions to address some of the challenges that we are facing. Thank you very much, Sampson and Anitha, for the different perspective that you have provided. I guess the audience are also listening and also noting down some of the questions that they have. And now it's time for the questions, Q&A. So we have, I think we went a bit over time, so we just give 10 minutes for the Q&A before you wrap up. So please, if you have questions, I could see some on the chat. I think Lucas, and also we received some question during the registration. So Lucas, maybe if you can unmute and please give more context to your question so that Sampson can understand and trying to provide some answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. Sampson, you had been talking a little bit about how the differences in education in the different countries, the disparity, something may not be accepted from one country to another. So has Africa considered doing something similar to what many institutions, many countries in Europe came together, created the Bologna process, creating the European higher education area that basically said, this is what we together as the European higher education area will consider to be quote unquote legitimate education?
Thank you, Lucas, for the question. We don't have something at the moment like that in Africa. One thing I know for a fact that is that, you know, the African Union a few years back identified or sort of created centers of excellence in specific areas and sort of scattered them across the continent and work with like different different nations within Africa to sort of support them and also bring students from all over Africa to study in those institutions. So far as qualifications and regulations or the regulatory environment is concerned, I believe we have a very gray area and an opportunity to sort of learn from perhaps the European higher education area, considering that we recently, the Africa Free Continental Trade Area came into effect. I believe that that's like one of the useful vehicles for us to start thinking about reskilling or reskilling for the future. When it comes to reskilling for the future, how do we plug this into the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement? And how do we also sort of build an African higher education area out of that particular plan? I know that the AU is doing quite some work around this, and it would be nice to see this come to life. But so long as I'm aware, we don't have something of that sort at the moment in Africa.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Lucas, also for that question. So I think another question is here, how should we proceed? If the person who asked these questions already also here, please feel free to jump in and explain. But I'm just reading what I'm seeing. So how should we proceed so that we are not distracted by the apps and other things like entertainment that are also accessible through these digital platforms? How can we ensure that is so then we also not distracted with these things? Okay, I see Lucas. Go ahead, Anitha.
Delete the apps.
Straight to the front. I see.
I think that if I was to answer that question, I would say it has to become interesting. Again, I think that I already see that with the way some of the professors assign their homeworks or their research papers. I mean, you give autonomy to the student, you give them a choice to kind of do it there, but of course they still have to relay that information to the professor. But there are some apps that are out there strictly for you not to be distracted, like Lockdown Browser. I mean, you open it and you can't do anything else except what you're doing, right? So I would say there's still a room for improvement in that. Yeah, so I think it's possible, we can learn. I even read one time where this paper basically was trying to say that let's stop telling students to stop looking at their phones. Let's even allow them to use them, but at least what can they create with that technology that will, shape the future of education? So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Anitha. So the next question is, okay, please also people who are already here, feel free to ask your question. These are questions that we got from the people who added it during the registration. If some of you want to ask a question, please feel free to raise your hand. Right. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Mr. Nilton. Yes, Nilton. Oh, someone was speaking. Is it Professor Blaise? Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Sadikh. I am always interested in something that was mentioned during the conversation. The how to connect. I'm always interested in the best strategy to really connect the training in classroom with the need of the market. So maybe someone can help me because for me is really a tough task to convince industry partners to really actively contribute to curriculum review, and maybe someone here has a better strategy. Thank you.
Okay, Anitha, Sampson, who'd want maybe to provide some perspective on that? Is the question clear?
So yeah, the question is clear. Okay, yeah. Okay. Sorry, Anitha. I just saw one.
Go ahead.
I saw one question and I wanted to tie it to what Blaise is asked. It's about how culture influences the ability to think critically and think or learn critically. And what I'll say is that, initially when I began my study, I was looking at innovation in language policy and how language policy sort of enable people to think critically. And Rwanda, South Africa, Ghana has had like, changes in language policies for various reasons. And the data that is available, the insights from the data that's available is that children learning or between the ages of kindergarten to grade 4, if they learn in their mother tongue, they are able to build the competencies they require to be able to effectively, learn or sort of engage in that education environment. So that is a very important thing to note. In terms of Blaze's question, I would say that it depends on the type of institution that you are. People in industry typically are not very, just like you'd find, I think it's a both ways thing. One thing is you might not get them to come and sit with you to say, I'm reviewing this curriculum together, right? But another way to engage industry, and that's like a gradual process because it's just like academia, is creating opportunities for people in industry to come into the classroom and support the work that you do. So an example that has worked in many places and at UCT and Ashasi and a couple of other places is they have what you call adjunct faculty. Now, these adjunct faculty and professors of practice do not have a PhD, right? These guys are often people who have a wealth of experience in industry, understand the ins and outs of industry, and then come to deliver courses over a period of time. So for instance, you can engage them for a month where once in every week, they come to talk about something from industry. So you're having your theory or you're having what you need to know, and then they then come to supplement what you're doing. So if you have a model on maybe the business environment in the 21st century, you can invite 1 or 2 people to come as adjunct faculty, and then they would either spend 1 hour with a class where they talk about the business environment as they know it, as a way of sort of complementing what you're having in the classroom.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, go ahead, Anitha, go ahead. Sorry about that.
And just to add to what Sampson just said, in terms of just the industry, I would say, I'm in the middle of that and I'm really trying to see how we can even like go straight to the companies. Right now, we're talking to the Kigali International Financial Center, and Rwanda Finance. They're positioning themselves to bring in companies in Rwanda, but I know that there's a huge capacity building skills gap, right? So how do you find out what exactly those skills are? And then how do we as, higher learning institutions build literally, I'm gonna call it a product, right? A product that will be offered to individuals to have those skills. So for example, our university now has a certificate program where we're really packaging 3 courses at a time that have like a really specific knowledge within courses, so that if Rwanda Finance says we're looking for someone who understands the investment portfolio and everything around that, we'll offer those courses. They'll be able to have that knowledge and then really kind of immediately have a direct impact in the industry. But I do agree that there's a lack of dialogue between these higher learning institutions and the industry. And I know that the Ministry of Education in Rwanda is trying. They do these meetings with the industry, but I would say, like Professor Chanda, Professor Blaise said, there's something missing. There still needs to be a lot more work for it to be practical or realized.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, thank you. Hope it was a satisfying answer. So I think we have Dr. Tomlin Paul. Before just this question that popped up, someone asked a question about technology is taking us further away from human interaction, which is, in his opinion, a highly important factor, right? Things like, individuals' mental, emotional growth. How do you relate with that question, Sampson and Anitha? What's your take on that, particularly that question of the humanity part of, technology is taking away that aspect of also human interaction?
I think
I'll
as,
let Sampson begin.
as custodians of technology and users of technology and champions of technology, we need to identify safeguarding mechanisms where we protect the interest of people who use technology, right? And so that is, I think we can start from that point where we, people come online, do all sort of things online, but we need to find a way to sort of safeguard. And once people are aware or conscious of the safeguarding policies, it also helps. Those safeguarding policies can have resources to sort of help them through, like, all the mental strain embedded in those policies.
Sorry, can I jump in? I think you misunderstood my question.
Okay, sure. What's your question?
May I?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Could you please
so
tell us your name before?
okay, I'm Mandek. I am
All
from
right.
Djibouti.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome webinar session. I was having issues connecting, but now I'm here. This is a really interesting topic to talk about. My question was for workers, for people that work together, and for teams that brainstorm, how can you replace human interactions when it comes to technology? Because in my point of view, I believe human interaction is highly important when it comes to brainstorming and emotional and mental growth for human being. So how do you reconcile those things?
Okay. In 1 minute, if possible, Sampson, time is on our side. We just want to pick maybe two or one more question with that.
I just want to say technology can never replace human interactions and what the humanity that we share, right? So we should see technology as complementing everything we do rather than replacing what we do. I don't know if that sort of answers the question. So finding like a mixed bag or a hybrid sort of thing approach is very needed.
Okay, so it's like the blended model that Anitha was mentioning, even that they are practicing in the school, right?
Yeah.
Great. So I think Dr. Tomlin-Paul, please go ahead for your question.
Thanks very much, Sadikh, and thanks. This is an excellent session. I know we're running late for time. Just a comment, really, as I heard both speakers talk, and very well. And I like the point Sampson made at the start about, we use cell phones today, and there's a progression there. We all have to step up with the reality. Where we work is at the University of Global Health Equity, and what came to mind is that there's a kind of tension in the curriculum development process where we are training to get competencies. Yes, for today, we want doctors who are able to deliver a baby well and so on, work in rural communities where there's lack of physicians and so. But we're also adding to that using the technology. For instance, we have introduced students to digital dissection. So our anatomy teaching, we do traditional cadaver, but we have an excellent digital platform where you dissect the whole body very easily, and that builds engagement. We find the students are so excited and interested rather, that it improves the effectiveness of learning because they're so deeply engaged in the anatomy. And we also now adding a point of care ultrasound to our clinical training. Now that's like a little instrument as small as your phone that you can put on the patient's chest and you pick up all the signs of the heart. It's almost saying we don't really need that stethoscope that we used to have because you can get so much data from this small instrument. And we're not using that as yet in hospitals across the world even, but we're putting it in front of our students to say, look, learn these skills from now, because when you graduate, the future of work, as we talk about it, you got to be able to use point of care ultrasound on your patients, wherever you are, rural, urban, etc. So I thought exciting stuff, really wanted to share my comments with the group. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. That's really very insightful. I think, I'm not sure, but if some of you are interested in that, I think more than happy if Dr. Tomlin-Paul is willing to just reach out to him, maybe to have more context around that. But I find it very insightful. I think we are running a bit over time. We would love to answer all these questions, but more than happy maybe to forward them to the different speakers or relevant people who can provide some perspective. So for now, we'll have to go to the next steps from here. That was the last question that marked the end of the show webinar. Now from here, it's more of looking at what are the next steps from here. Like we said at the beginning, we want to bring all these people, and we are glad we have a emergence of practitioners who are already in the field of education who provide really very practical perspectives on this discussion. And we want to see now how we can turn that into an action guide. So from tomorrow, you'll hear from us first a thank you note that we'll be sharing with you, a feedback form just to have a sense of how the session was for you, and what we can improve. Because again, we want to create this community where we'll be coming here every month. And next week, we'll share the action guide. All this that was said in this webinar, we turn it into an action guide that will be shared with all the people who participated. And then from the week after, 2 weeks from the webinar, we will ask you for sure the topics that you think we may cover. Some of the things that were covered here that still maybe we need to dig deeper into and have more people to explain more around it. And if you also have people in your network who you can suggest as speakers who can provide very interesting perspective, more than happy to welcome them here. And then in that way, we can keep the conversation going till the next LEXICON in-person conference that time around. And yeah, that's definitely it. And yeah, this is just to give you an overview of what the action guide is about. I'm putting on the chat a link to it. This was for the first webinar that we shared, I think, in some of the emails. So because the point of it is just really to also help people have a grasp of this that is discussed here. So that's it. I think great, very much thank you too. Another thing, one last thing would be also something that I think would be relevant for people to read. There's a research paper that I worked on, and Professor Blaise also was part of it. I shared it on the chat, the second link. You can read about it, and it's about regulation also, how regulators can work with Highland institutions to enable more innovative type of learning. And the last thing is through the people who host this is Learnable. So like I said, it's a learning design agency and more focusing on supporting Highland institutions and different stakeholders education to provide learning that meets our outcomes that we want to drive the type of development that we want in our context. And some of the things we organize is this LEXICON conference and a number of other things that we'll share more throughout in the forward and follow-up emails. And yeah, I think that's it. I don't want to take more of your time. It's really a pleasure having you and listening to all of the perspective that you provided. Anitha, Sampson, maybe one last word before we close off. And yeah.
Thank you very much for having us. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Amazing, thank you too.
Yeah, same here. And, we're available to, help and also talk more about this and see how we can make all of us successful in the work that we do. So
amazing.
Reach out. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you too for all the participants, the speakers. It's really a pleasure. It has been a long journey with them, trying to connect, share every day WhatsApp messages. I hope my WhatsApp messages were not bothering you, but it's part of the thing to make sure also people join. So thank you for making time. And like we say in my local language, Jerejef, right?
Jerejef.
Okay. Have a good evening. All right.
Yeah.
Bye. Great.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Thank you too.
Bye.
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 All right. Bye. Thank you.